All right, hello and welcome to the lab for the week. So this one is lab 3. It's about triangles and graphing calculators, and it will be due on the 16th, and let us go ahead and get started. So get the starter code as usual, and there are two files, draw triangle and graphingcalc.cpp. So the first thing that you're going to do is edit this draw triangle.cpp file to draw a right-leaning right triangle. So you see how it's kind of like tilted to the right there? That's what you're going to draw. And the best way to do it is with a nested loop. So let me show you how. Dun dun dun. Let me do a left-leaning right triangle for you. I'll give you an example. All right. So here we go. Let me make my font huge, and let's get started. So what I would like to show you is let's make a left-leaning right triangle, and then you can edit this code that I'm about to write and make it your own and convert it to a right-leaning right triangle. So the idea is, if we're about to print out a triangle, it's unfortunate that it's giving me a bunch of stars here. The idea is, on the first line there will be 1 star. On the second line, there will be 2 stars. On the third line, there will be 3 stars. I think you see where I'm going with this. And so no matter the size, no matter what the user enters as far as the size goes, we know how many stars need to appear on each line. Okay? So this is very similar to the box drawing example. Okay? On line 1, we draw 1 star. On line 2, we draw 2 stars, etc. So on and on and on, forever and ever. That's the secret. And let me get us to our box drawing example, and I'll show you how we can go and change that to very easily make a triangle instead of a box. So let's ask the user for a size, and we'll get that size. Now that we have it, we can draw a box of size by size, lines by columns. For int I equals 0, I is less than size, I plus plus. For int j equals 0, j is less than size, j plus plus. And now, remember that the inner loop worries about how many stars to draw, so we're going to draw size of them. See out a single star, please. And then, once we're done with that, we need to break the line. So the next time we come back to this loop and do this whole body all over again, we draw more stars on a different line. So we got to break that line. Okay, so that's the box drawing. And this makes a box of any size, in fact. So let me show you that. So, I don't know, 3. So that's a box of 3 by 3 stars, 5. And you can get fancy and be like, I don't know, 14. So it all works. And the only thing we have to worry about now is, if we didn't want all those stars, we wanted a triangle, we need to control, like on the first line, on the second line, do different things, okay? And so it just so happens that this variable right here, I, controls, it tells us what line we're on. It's always incremented with each new line. I changes with each new line. I hope you see that. So on the first line, I is 0. On the second line, I is 1, etc., etc. And so if only we didn't draw size stars on each line, but I plus 1 stars on each line, because if it's 0, we'll draw 1 star. If it's 1, we'll draw 2 stars. You see that? We'll use I to determine how many stars to draw on each line. Okay? So now if I say 14, look what happens. On the very first line, I is set to 0. And that's going to cause us to execute this inner for loop just one time, because I starts at 0, I is less than 0 plus 1, well, it's only going to execute its body one time. Likewise, when I is 1, we're on the second line, and I plus 1 is 2. See that? So always execute this body, always draw I plus 1 stars, That is the idea. Okay, so always draw I plus 1 stars on each line. And that's going to cause us to print a left-leaning right triangle. And this can be of any size. Be like 0, that's fine. 1, that's fine. You might want to complain. I'm going to ask you to complain when there are fewer, like when the user asks for a negative triangle. But this is how to do it when there's non-negative values given to you. So just use what line you're on, use this variable up here in this loop's condition. Yeah? That's going to make it change each time and draw a different sized triangle with different numbers of stars on each line. Okay, so that's a left-leaning right triangle. And now it's your job in this lab to draw a right-leaning one. So you're going to need to put some spaces up here before you get to your stars. Okay, so it's going to be very, very similar, but it might involve an if statement now inside of the inner loop's body. Okay, so do think about that and yell at me if you have any questions, but this is how it should look. Yeah, you enter size being 0. You should print out nothing, things like that. Okay, so that is some sample runs of my solution, and here is what the code looks like that I'm giving to you. Here it is. So yeah, I've already asked for the size. If the size is less than 0, you're going to just stop the program. We don't like that, so you can use exit or return to do that. And otherwise, if you got this far and you didn't stop the program, you should print that triangle now. Okay, so as a hint, think about how many total spaces and stars do you need to print on each line. Okay, think about that. That will help you. Okay, so let's draw a triangle. And the next part of this lab is graphing calculators. So I taught you how to draw a circle in the class. Now you're going to draw different functions, 3 different kinds of functions in this lab. So the user is going to enter a choice of 0, 1, or 2. And if the user enters 0, you're going to graph this function, y equals 0.15x squared minus 3. Okay, it's a weird, some weird numbers, but it looks nice on the terminal, I promise. If the user enters 1, you'll graph this. If the user enters 2, you'll graph this function. Okay? And remember that sign is in CMath. It's already there. So yeah, just definitely look at the comments in the file because I've written a lot of them and I've made most of it for you. Okay? So this is going to be what your output should look like. And this is option 0. Here I've typed option 0, so we're graphing this function right here, which is a parabola. Isn't that pretty? So that's that one. This is option 1. It's a cubic function. Very also pretty. And then here's sine of something nice and wavy. Okay, so those are your 3 options. You'll be printing each of these, and you'll have to figure out how to look at the user's choice and use that to guide you into graphing one function over another. But it's really not going to be too bad. Just look at the code that I've released from class about graphing that circle. That's essentially all you need to worry about. Okay, so I'm going to show you the code, and then we'll get us out of here. Okay, so for graphing calc, I've done most of it for you. I've gotten this inner loop for you, ready to go. So it's just your job to worry about the body of the inner loop. The user's already given you a choice into this variable called choice. It's an int. And you can just pretend you are working on your current xy coordinate, and it's your job to either draw a space to just move along, a axis line, so maybe you're on the y-axis or the x-axis itself, so you'll print like either a pipe or a dash. And if you're in the middle and you're not already, that's not where your graph is, if you're in the middle and the graph doesn't overlap, you'll draw a plus to show the axes meeting. Okay, so if you just follow these comments, it will all work out. Okay, so you'll check to see if your current coordinate is in the graph. So what you're going to do is compare the rounded version of this to your y coordinate. Okay, you'll use round to do that. And for this particular example, you'll check that, okay, you're going to round this, the right-hand side, and see if it equals y. If so, we should plot it at our current xy location. Okay, that's the idea. And then if it's on the graph, print a star. Otherwise, if it's not on the graph, maybe print an axis if we're along the axis line, if x is currently 0, or if y is 0, we'll print a dash. If they're both 0, you should print a plus to show the axes meeting. And if nothing is true, we're not on the graph, we're not part of the axes, just draw a blank space, okay? So that we keep on trucking to the next coordinate that maybe is on the graph. Okay, so that's all. And then after, of course, you want to break the line with a new line, just like I showed you in class. But yeah, the hard work is done. Just determine if something is on the graph, plot it if so. Okay, you'll be using your CMath stuff. So please yell at me if you have any questions about that. I think it's a really fruitful example. It's going to be very fun once you get this to draw pretty things. And yeah, that's all I got for you. So you'll turn it in as usual, those 2 CPP files, and the graphing calc.cpp is worth a little over twice as much because it's a bit more in-depth and cooler. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, that's all I got for you. So good luck on this. Again, please ask me as many questions as you come up with. I'll be happy to answer them, and I will see you next week.